Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm going to be giving you guys a wave check. Today I will be your surf instructor. I want to talk a little bit about waves. If anybody doesn't know, waves is actually a hairstyle. My client here works to keep his waves nice by using a brush. Notice how in this hairstyle it requires him to wave his hair down by brushing forward with the grain of his hair. With the assistance of any conditioning products, there's so many out there. I recommend you guys do your research on your own time, but you also need a do-rag in order to complete this hairstyle. Throughout this haircut, I want to be explaining to you guys how I can achieve a certain look, which I'm going to be doing a mid-skin fade with a little bit of a drop. But just to let you guys know beforehand, I'm going to educate you a little bit on how to attack this certain hairstyle. Because the hair was laid down by brushing with the grain, I'm going to be going in with my clippers, sometimes with the grain and sometimes against the grain. And it's very important to understand that if you go with the grain, you won't be cutting off as much hair. And if you go against the grain, you will be cutting off more hair. So for this specific hairstyle, I just want to show you a quick indication on which way his hair is actually flowing. If you notice from the top, it's flowing straight forward, and then as it starts going underneath the bridle ridge, the angle starts to change. And I apologize for my lines, I'm pretty new at this thing. So just to quickly show you guys, this is the way his hair flows. And looking at the back here, especially around the crown area, you guys can see that his hair growth pattern does change. Now remember, the crown area located right here is the epicenter of where his hair growth starts. So this is the map that's gonna show me which direction his hair wants to go. So if I wanna make sure that hair, specifically like in areas like this here, are laid down, I wanna make sure that I brush it with the grain, okay? And what that looks like from the back angle is this. So out from the crown here, it actually goes this way. And then notice in this area here, it actually starts to change direction. So anywhere to the right of it, it'll start to go more outwards to the right and then proceed to change its angle as it gets into the back area here. And starting to even go outwards. So it's not automatically going to be going one specific direction on any client. This does differ from client to client. So make sure you are checking in on that crown area and making sure you are brushing and going with or against the grain in this fashion that is going with his hair direction. Okay, so aside from knowing the growth pattern, there are specific points of reference that I want to show you guys that I'm going to be working with before we get started on this video. This point here, I've explained this in a previous video. This is the temple arch. Okay, this point here, which is going to be definitely down the middle of the arch, is where I'm going to be drawing one of my guidelines. Another point that I'm going to be using on the head here is between the temple peak point, which is the circle right here, temple peak, and the hairline here. I'm actually going to be drawing a guideline right in between here in order to keep the fade around the mid to mid-high area. Keep in mind here too, my client has a lilac color on his hair. So I'm actually going to be keeping in mind throughout the whole haircut that some parts I want to keep lilac, specifically the top area above the bridle ridge, which is right here. This area separates the top from the side of the head. This is called the bridle ridge. This is the bridle ridge. Anywhere below here or on top of this area, I want to make sure that I understand that I want to create some contrast. So it has to blend from the lilac color into black colored hair. And below that, around this area here, I'm going to be keeping it skin. So there's going to be 3 different contrasts that I'm going to try to maintain throughout this hairstyle, okay? So Before I get started here, I just wanted to make sure that you guys understand in full that I'm gonna be using multiple different techniques, only clipper work for the most part, and I'm gonna be spending a lot of time going back and forth between number 3 and number 0, all the way down to the shaver in order to achieve this look. Let's get started. What I wanna do for the next couple minutes here, which I'm gonna speed up for you to make it a couple seconds, is all I wanna do is I wanna gather information, okay? I wanna act like, you know, I'm you guys cutting somebody's waves for the first time. And when you're doing that, it can be really discouraging because you don't know how the hair is going to act. So instead of just guessing, what I'm gonna do is, because I already know that everywhere below this line is gonna be taken to skin or something that's gonna show some skin, what I can do is I can use this whole area in here, within this space here, to test out exactly what different guards look like when I apply them to the head. So what you're gonna see me do here is just go through a couple of different guards, testing out to see what type of shade I'm gonna get. Am I gonna get 80% lilac and 20% black hair? Am I gonna get 100% black hair with 0 skin? Or am I gonna get 50% black hair with 50% of the skin showing? Or am I gonna just see skin with no hair follicle? So let's go ahead and see what happens. All right, so as you guys can see here, I worked within this area to create somewhat of a different shade in different parts. This area here was already grown out to be a number 1. So this is my number 1. If I want any area to look this dark, I'm gonna make sure that in my head mentally, I know that I need to use a number 1 guard. Anywhere up here in this region where you start to see majority black colored hair, this is where I went in with my number 1.5 closed. So again, mental note, if I want the hair in a specific area to look this dark with like little bits of lilac, 1.5 is where I wanna be. So around the parietal ridge area is probably where I'm gonna make sure I hit this. But for the most part, if I really wanna make sure I wanna see contrast between lilac and black, this area here, which I hit with a number 3 guard, shows 50% lilac and 50% black colored hair. So I'm gonna use this just on top of the parietal ridge to make sure I get that transition of contrast from lilac to black before going down into the 1.5 and actually hitting it so that I can see more black hair, okay? So that's my number 3, my number 1.5, and my number 1, and you can see the contrast. Anywhere that, like in this region here, you can see lack of density. This is probably gonna be my liner or my shaver, but for the most part, you guys, I have enough information here to start going in on my haircut, so let's get it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with my 1.5 guard closed, just about an inch below the parietal ridge. Keep in mind now that I have enough information to understand. My first guideline is a 1.5 closed. Second guideline is gonna be at the temple arch, right down the middle, point I pointed out earlier in the diagram. And I'm just gonna hit this with my liner and remove all the bulk below there. And once I've completed doing that, I'm just gonna lighten up that first guideline. And I'm gonna do that with a 0.5 guard closed. And all I really wanna do is lighten it up just enough so I'm going halfway above that line, still below the number 1.5 guard line. And what that's gonna do is give me just enough of a visual. In order to take it out one more notch, I'm gonna take it down with no guard, and I'm just gonna play with the lever. I don't wanna remove the line fully, because what you're gonna see me do here in the next step is actually hit the shaver. So I'm leaving that line so I don't push up a new line with the shaver. So taking my shaver, I'm actually gonna go about 1/4 of an inch below this line that I kept. And I'm gonna start by going very lightly with light pressure, letting the shaver do the work. I'm gonna go down with the grain, and then I will go below that up against the grain. I'm also actively keeping a brush in hand just to make sure that I brush off all the loose hair. And now that I've completed that shaver, I can remove this little bit of line that I have that I have at the very bottom here. And all I'm going to be doing is doing a rough erase of this guideline, and then I'm going to be pushing up now the next guideline with a number 1 closed. And again, I'm keeping it dark enough to still be able to fade. And throughout this process, I'm actually just making sure that I stay within that area which is below the bridle ridge. You're gonna see me go back and forth a lot throughout this, keeping in mind that I don't really know exactly how this hair is gonna look in terms of density. In terms of contrast, I have a little bit of an idea because of the test I did, but I'm still gonna have to roll with the punches. And by that, I mean that I'm gonna have to continue to adjust throughout this whole haircut. Here now above, I'm actually gonna take my number 3, and whenever I'm worried about how much hair I'm taking off, I'm gonna start by going with the grain first, just as a safety precaution. I don't wanna take off too much hair by going against the grain. And I do want to point out, if I haven't said it already, the client is wolfing his hair. The term wolfing is the term used for wavers when they're growing their hair out in order for it to lay better. So I'm making sure that I'm not affecting the top of the head at all. I'm literally just grazing off enough hair in order to cut off enough for it to lay down still. And I'm going to be continuing to drop now from a number 3 guard to a number 2 guard and everything below it. And you're gonna see me go back and forth here, but this here is my number 2 with the grain now. I just completed my number 3 with the grain and against the grain, so I'm gonna go number 2 with the grain and then against the grain. I'm also gonna practice opening and closing my lever with both of those different strokes, going with and against the grain. And keeping in mind that for this point here, a lot of this is going to be visual. I would say that this haircut on this hair texture is a medium to more advanced difficulty. So if you are not comfortable cutting black hair, I would recommend that you try somebody that doesn't have waves for your first fade on black hair. I would try maybe somebody who just you can go straight up against the grain with, because going with and against the grain, you just want to make sure that you actually just don't get lost. By doing so, you guys can see that I'm taking my time, and you can expect to take your time, especially if you're new at this. I'm down to my number 1 guard now, and even if I have gone through the guards in full, notice how there's still a lot of areas of high density. It's not perfect. The hair is not perfectly laid down. I don't think it's ever going to be perfectly laid down. And notice too that the client does have an uneven canvas behind the ears in the area that we call dips. In this area, you're gonna see me go over even more times, because what I'm doing is I'm just grazing off hair using either the full blade or just the corners of the blade. And what that's gonna allow me to do is to hit certain spots, and then I'm taking a quick step back, which you won't notice, but I'm actually constantly taking looks back at the camera, and I'm looking at the mirror, and I'm also taking a step back myself in order to just show you guys that it takes a lot of time to detail this. Now, in my last video, I said that I spend just as much, if not more time detailing as I do going through the fundamental technical steps of the fade. And for me personally, I think it's really important to understand if you want to set yourself apart and your haircuts to stand out to your client, especially if you're trying to retain clients, you want to give them something unique. And I think the best way to do that is to spend as much time as you can to customize this haircut for them. And that means that you are looking at the hair and understanding the hair, making sure that with each stroke you're gathering more information on how to make this area look better or more consistent, just so that on this panel, before I leave and go to the other side in the back, that it really looks how I want it to look before finishing. So you're gonna see me continue again. I'm gonna go against the grain and with the grain, just to get that transition from the lilac colored hair to the black colored hair. I'm trying to get that buttery. I'm trying to get it to be a softer contrast so it doesn't look so dark of a contrast, but I'm still leaving enough black colored hair on top of the skin to show that stretched out fade. And as you can see, this is really starting to unfold into a nice buttery soft fade. But again, notice how much time I'm taking in order to do this. I'm also brushing constantly with the grain of the hair in order to make sure that those waves are laid down. And that's a very important tip, you guys. Make sure that for this type of hairstyle, you guys have a brush in hand. A comb might not do it as well on straight hair as it does on straight hair with this super curly hair. So just make sure you guys have the right tools available on hand. My specific brush has two sides to it. And now that I'm done this side, I'm actually happy with the way that the gradient looks in terms of the fade. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and line it up. I'm gonna be using my detailer to just get into the arch area. I've also noticed beforehand that my client's hairline isn't the strongest hairline where the lilac is. So I won't be doing too much lineup work to the top of his hairline, only to the side of the temple there and to the temple arch. And you guys noticed after I lined it up, my eyes kind of did a quick reset, and I'm noticing that there's still areas that I want to clean up. So I just went back and I did that. So going to the other side now, I'm noticing that the hair growth pattern is different, okay? So on the side panel here, I really need to make sure that I angle my clipper against the grain. I can't just go straight from the bottom up. Notice I'm going on a little bit of a diagonal. I don't necessarily need to go directly horizontal left to right, but as long as you guys understand that I cannot attack this from a vertical standpoint, I'm at least hitting it at a diagonal. I can continue now with all the information I have. I took all the information from detailing from that other side and I applied it to this side, and it made it a lot faster for me to hit that side than I did the first panel. Now I'm on to the third panel, which is the back panel. And again, I want to create consistency. And what I want to do is, that means that as my guidelines drop to the back, I'm still really taking the time to make sure that it's symmetrical on both sides. And that means in the corners as well, I'm going to spend a lot of time to blend out into those dip areas. And you guys can notice now how the lilac kind of stretches all the way in consistency from left to right. So in order to enhance this haircut, I'm going to be using a natural hair fiber. And what I wanted to show you by putting it onto a white business card is showing you how many pumps it takes in order for it to visually be seen on the hair. I'm spraying half onto the business card and half onto his hairline, just in order to make it pop, just because the hair density isn't as strong as I'd like it to be. I'm not at all using the hair fiber to adjust the fade. I'm only using it to enhance the hairline itself after finishing it with a straight razor. And now that I've completed that, I'm just gonna go in naturally with the hairline. Because his hair is lilac, I'm not gonna be spraying black on top of the lilac. I don't think it would look very good. I'm gonna keep this hairline as natural as possible while trying to maintain that straight shape. And then I'm gonna finish the whole top of his head simply by going over it with freehanding on scissors. Notice how I went eye level, and all I wanted to do is take away the stray hairs. And this is my haircut, guys. Notice how the fade is a little bit stretched out, but I've managed to maintain the darkness in the corners of his hairline. I think it looks great, and honestly, this was a really fun haircut to do. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Can't wait to see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.